to what extent, in terms of untangling the summit knot, do you think it's crucial to kind of first address the very negative relationships between South Korea and Japan? Is that a sort of a key to untangling some of the other impediments to a sort of a regional summit?
But it's all tied up to domestic politics. Think about in the conflict, let's say all the Democratic Party of Japan, now it is called the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan. If it is very unlikely, but if candidate from that party becomes prime minister and come up with very progressive idea, as Hatoyama and others has been doing it, and then we have a progressive a party wins the next presidential election, then Japan and South Korean cooperation can change the entire landscape. Then we can persuade Japan, China, and the United States, even Russia, to come up with this kind of six-party security summit. But if we have a conservative party wins next October election in Japan, then conservative party wins the presidential election next March next year, then things will be very, very different. Therefore, now whole point is this: domestic politics really matters. And for that reason, I have been arguing that NGOs are very, very important in promoting the idea.
Can I follow that with a question about domestic politics in Korea too, and whether that's a condition for the perpetuation of the peace process? And you've talked about innovation, and I guess President Moon has been quite an innovative leader in carrying the Korean peace initiative forward. But his term ends, of course, next year. Is this an opportunity for North Korea to really try to bring something forward before President Moon has gone, or is it now a matter of looking at how we can build in the longer term on what President Moon has founded?
In fact, I did send several messages to North Korea through various channels, even through my writings. The golden time will be June, but they came 1 month later. And also they gave a proposal, okay, you suspend joint exercise, or we are going to suspend ties with South Korea. That was damn stupid. But the whole point is this: North Korea has not been really cooperative in building peace on the Korean Peninsula. They are really talking about it. They have been grumbling about all the hostile threat coming from the US, South Korea, and etc. But they have not shown really genuine interest in building peace. Perhaps they may not know how to do it. Okay? Therefore, we always got the conflicting signals from North Korea. On the one hand, they want a genuine peace. On the other hand, they want to destroy genuine peace. Therefore, again, maybe domestic politics in North Korea. North Korea is also divided. The military, some hardliners in party, they may not want, rapprochement with South Korea, peace on the Korean Peninsula. Like Kim Young-chul, the head of the Department of United Front, he's a hardline military general who became a vice chairman of the Central Committee. He also used to be the head of Korea People's Army's General Surveillance Bureau, okay, Reconnaissance and Surveillance Bureau, the extreme hardliner. Yeah? They do not want any kinds of rapprochement with South Korea or confidence building measures along the demilitarized zone, because those kinds of measures undermine North Korean military's activities in the front line. Therefore, again, I think even though North Korea is characterized by the monolithic leadership, there is hardliners and softliners. We can clearly see that kind of line. Okay. When I was in Pyongyang in September 2018, some of my friends, in North Korea told me that, there are a lot of people in the party line and the military who oppose these kinds of summit and President or Chairman Kim Jong-un's commitment to, to go for denuclearization kind of things. Even his decision to accept to visit Seoul in the September 19th Joint Pyongyang Declaration. Okay, the hardliners strongly opposed that Chairman Kim Jong-un should not visit to Seoul, but that's the reality. Therefore, the more I look into the situation in Northeast Asia, real problem is the anarchical structure of regional system in Northeast Asia. It is more of domestic political abuse and misuse of external environments for their political gain. That is the real problem. It's, I think, same for the United States.
Chung-in, let's take, that's a very interesting example, General Kim Yong-chol. Now, he was the senior general that I met with in 1991 when I went there, or 92, whatever the year was, must have been 91 in September. And he had met previously in the Inter-Korean Military Commission with General Lim Dong-won in South Korea. So he was well known to the South Koreans. He was known to be a notoriously hostile character who could be vituperative in his rhetoric for hours at a time in those contexts. And I found him to have the most subtle and nuanced appreciation and understanding of American military and foreign policy towards Korea of almost anyone I'd ever met. And he asked probing questions, he asked for evidence, he had a clear, I'll call it a refractive prism, that's B.C. Coe's framing. He had a refractive prism through which he looked at the world, and you didn't necessarily agree with his argument or conclusions, but you could certainly understand while it was reasonable for him to think what he thought. For example, he was particularly fixated on the B-52s in Guam, because I had told him as a peace researcher they had been nuclear decertified and they didn't need to worry about the B-52s in Guam in the context of the Bush announcement about withdrawal of nuclear weapons from Korea. And he came back and said, well, the flying time of a B-52 from Guam to here is almost the same to Pyongyang as it is to the DMZ. And during the August 1976 crisis, the United States put B-52 bombers up the Korean Peninsula for nearly 30 days straight. And then they veered off at the last moment. So we are very concerned, and we would need to see with our own eyes whether there are nuclear weapons in Guam or not. And I think that's a very reasonable position. I mean, after all, Puerto Rico is a non-nuclear weapons free zone. You can't, the United States under the nuclear weapon free zone in Latin America cannot station nuclear weapons in Puerto Rico, one of its own territories, and the same rules could apply to Guam in a regional nuclear weapon free zone, and in any form of monitoring and verification inspection regime, not only in South Korea, but in Guam. The North Koreans might have reciprocal inspection rights. My point is that Kim Yong-chol is hardline. In my experience in North Korea, anyone who has any actual power in the regime is necessarily hardline. There aren't any non-hardliners, they're all hardline, except for that one tiny twist at the end of a 5-hour briefing session that they'll slip in because they've been recorded through the entire session, where they'll make a little kind of diversion or inquiry as to whether this or that might be a significant change in their policy or in American policy. And that's what I would always listen for in those kinds of discussions during my visits to North Korea. At the time, he was actually part of, I think, Kim Jong-sun's engage the United States policy current in North Korea. He may no longer be of that stance, but I'd want to know that. And the only way to find that out is to talk to the guy. And when Clapper went there, the American intelligence official, to negotiate the bringing back of some silly American journalists who got themselves entrapped in North Korea at one point, he did not even attempt to engage General Kim over dinner. And like, what are you doing in North Korea when you're dealing with someone like General Kim and you're not even willing to talk to him? I mean, what an insult. How do you expect he's going to respond? So you've really, I am always amazed at the number of Americans who claim to know what North Koreans think, who have never met a single North Korean in their entire life. It is astounding how well they know and understand North Koreans without ever having talked to one. And in my experience, North Koreans are not the American nightmare. And what Americans think is North Korea is actually their own nightmare about themselves projected onto North Korea. They're actually in a war with themselves, which goes back to refighting the Korean War and all the guilt and angst and anger about that war, which is why these two powers, this tiny little black hole is in orbit around this giant black hole. And if they ever come to war with each other again, it'll be catastrophic. They are joined in a sort of fundamental way. And so peace requires that they both be transformed, not just North Korea, but also the United States. And I think our biggest problem is actually not domestic politics in North Korea or South Korea. It's actually domestic politics in the United States and China. They're the two real problems when it comes to the Korean Peninsula. But reasonable people can differ on this.
I think it is time, really for us, to really look into domestic politics. Jack Schneider and others have been suggesting so-called what they call the neo-realist, neoclassical realist perspective, international structure and domestic politics. They interact. Therefore, it is wrong to look at the international structure in terms of distribution of power, like Kenneth words. Therefore, domestic politics are equally important. And they studied, Nazi Germany case and some others. But I think it is time for us to pay attention to domestic politics. We tend to, treat the domestic policies as pre-given, but we got to really scrutinize how domestic politics works in such a way to prevent peace in this part of the world. And there comes the importance of NGOs. And also NGOs have become more important than ever before because of domestic political intertwinements with regional security dynamics.
Yeah. So Chung-in, this is very interesting. I mean, in relation just to unpack the whole notion of domestic politics a bit more, are you saying it's kind of, both retrospective and prospective? That is that we need to start thinking about the ways in which domestic political systems in all of the countries in the region are still afflicted by negative historical memory, and at the same time, are unable because of that to think about a positive future. So how do you see civil society groups, political parties, and others addressing these domestic dynamics so that there might be some constructive outcomes?
I think this is why we got to raise a voice. For example, Ria has been trying to mobilize Japanese parliamentarians to attend disallocate Japan, and the roundtable talk on how to improve bilateral relations. Japanese politicians are afraid of really coming to that kind of workshop because nowadays any kind of interaction with the South Korean politicians can be seen as a kind of curse in Japan. Okay, that is a reality. And also there is a very interesting coalition between hardline conservative politicians in South Korea, hardline conservative politicians in Japan, and progressive on the other hand. Same for the United States. Then the whole issue, if we really want a peace, we need to build a transnational, liberal coalition to promote peace. Therefore, for example, we have been working a lot of stuff with the Quincy Institute. Quincy has been really championing it. Bernie Sanders, Rob Khanna, they have been supporting the initiative. But very, very minority in the US. Okay. In Korea, at least, progressive government is in power. Therefore, our relative power is much greater. But our counterpart in Washington is a minority. Even in Japan, anybody who talk about peace, treat it as really minority in Japan. So we have a really existential dilemma here.